Welcome to the Publishing Performance Show, the podcast that helps self-published authors turn their passion into a profit. Now, I'm your host, Teddy Smith, and if you're serious about building a sustainable business, then you're in the right place. Every week, I sit down with successful authors, industry experts, and publishing professionals who share their exact strategies they use right now to how they've grown their business, grow their readership, increase their book sales, and essentially to make a bit more money. Now, whether you're just starting out or you're looking to scale your existing publishing business, you'll walk away from every episode with actionable insights you can implement immediately. Now, if you're new here, it would really help me out if you could subscribe either on Apple or Spotify or YouTube or wherever you are. Just simply hit the subscribe button. It really helps the show to get more reach, which means we can get better guests for you and we can help you out in more ways. All right, let's dive into this episode. Hi everyone, and welcome to the Publishing Performance Show. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Kevin Anderson, who's the CEO and the founder and the editor-in-chief of Kevin Anderson Associates. Not to be confused with Kevin J. Anderson, who we've already interviewed. Thank you, Kevin, for joining the show.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to join. And yeah, I'm a big fan of Kevin Anderson's in general. I've actually worked with Kevin J. Anderson on a bunch of projects. He's done some writing for us, and I work with his agent, Gottlieb, quite a bit as well. So yeah, always a pleasure to be associated with such. Which Kevin Anderson's and a tennis player too, so I'm in for it.
I met him once, and someone I knew had started working for you, I think, and I was like, "Hey, Kevin, someone started working for you," and he was like, "You got the wrong guy." But but yeah, so today we're going to be talking about Kevin Anderson Associates, which is a business that focuses on ghostwriting. So I think a lot of authors, a lot of people, they want to write a book and maybe they don't have the time or they're feeling a bit stuck. And I think that's really where you come in and you help them to get over that. So why don't you give us a bit of an overview of like how Kevin Anderson works and what that process looks like and what sort of people you work with?
Yeah. So how we help authors is we help them anywhere they're in the journey, whether they're starting out and they need a lot of help with either ghostwriting or rewriting their material as they write it. And we also work with authors that have already finished their manuscript or are partway through to guide them editorially and help them finish their project and figure out the exact publishing path that's going to be ideal for them to achieve their goals. And what makes us unique in the space is when it is working with us, they get to work with former publishing executives and literary agents and best-selling writers that are all in-house at our team. So it's they're really getting the highest caliber of help that's available in the industry.
Yeah. What does when I think there's a lot of misconceptions maybe around ghostwriting and what it involves and like what actually happens. Like, what does that process look like behind the scenes?
Yeah, it's important to remember that ghostwriting is not just writing a book based on a prompt that's given and that it's completely detached from the author, right? Ghostwriting is a very collaborative process. So it's really about accessing what the writer wants to say and really uncovering their tone and their edge and their style and writing the book that's going to be authentic to them. So it's a very close collaboration. Our clients are typically people who their number one skill set is not writing. They might be really good orators. They might be really great on stage, but when it comes to putting their thoughts into writing, they really struggle. And so they're working with us to give us all of the wisdom, all the ideas, or if it's a story, all the story and details. And then we put it into, we've developed it into a book that's in their authentic voice, that's really true to who they are. But it's very collaborative. It's a lot of back and forth, and it's really meant to be something that is still very much the authors. You know, we're detached. We're not authors. We're the writers. We're like a sophisticated pen that's accessing what they really want to say and putting it in a way that can really reach readers and make sense to them and just kind of connect that link between the author and the reader.
Yeah, I love that you say it's not just a set of prompts. That's a really interesting way of framing it.
Yeah, exactly, and that's important. You know, obviously in the age of AI, it's we aren't meant to be an echo chamber with the author either. AI is very prompt driven. It's a feedback loop with yourself, and it's also drawing on a wide range of content that's totally detached from the author. So it lacks edge, it lacks personality, and it also lacks intuitive interview skills and empathy. A big part of ghostwriting is actually figuring out the story or the things that are making author who they are that are not known to the author, things that are underneath. And so a big part of the process is like a therapy session or with a psychologist where um, you're really trying to dig in and pull something out of the author that they didn't even really know was there, and connect dots that they didn't realize were there with their story or with their message. And so that's something that really takes a skilled journalistic approach or interview approach that can read the room, that can read the author, knows when to really push or when to hold back, and also has empathy for the author and what this book project is and how it serves their goals. And so, anyway, it's one of those situations where sometimes we know what's going to be best for making a book good, a really great book that's going to serve their goals better than what they do on their own. So it's a very different process than AI, which is it's very much an echo chamber.
Yeah. You're trying to find something new, a new angle, rather than just, with AI is working with what's gone before. You're trying to find that new angle to what that person wants to write about. It's completely different, I think.
Yeah.
Who are the people you find that typically hire ghostwriters with you?
Yeah, we get a wide range. We do a lot of celebrity memoirs and celebrity and also novels that they feel passionate about. That we do a lot of IP. So like the Five Nights at Freddy's was a big #1 New York Times bestseller, and it turned into 2 different films that were combined for over 500 million at the box office globally. So that was based on a video game, and we wrote the novels and a bunch of iterations of that. So we do get clients that have IP that they want to write books around. We get a lot of business authors, so people that have really made it, that have become a billionaire, or just successful in general in their practice or their profession, and they want to share that wisdom and that guidance with readers. And then we get a lot of memoirs where it's just an incredible story that someone really just wants to get out there for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's an incredible story that is going to be that's essentially a novel that's really well, memoirs are obviously very similar to novels in they're character driven and story arc driven. But a lot of people come to us for their memoirs for different reasons. Sometimes it's there's a lesson to be learned there, where it's kind of a memoir with lessons, and other times it's just a really incredible story.
Yeah, definitely. When you're ghostwriting with clients, what's that level of involvement look like between the ghostwriter and the client?
Yeah, it's a really close collaboration. So at the very beginning, we typically get a whole team together. All of our projects are done as a team. So I have a writer, a project manager, an editor. All of our editors are former Big Five acquisitions editors or publishing executives. We have a former literary agent that's also involved in the project to help with thinking through the positioning and the publishing strategy. And they all get together for ideally several days in person. They often meet at our office in London or in New York. We also have an office in LA, but we also can meet at their home or their place of business. But typically, we'll meet for a couple of days at least, just to talk through everything. The entire story, do brainstorming, figure out exactly what their goals are and how to structure the book in a way that's going to achieve them. But those first couple of days or weeks, if they want to do it over Zoom, there is a lot of just brainstorming and figuring out what exactly we want to do with the book. And then once we kind of see where all the puzzles of the mosaic are, we try to kind of fit them into a structure and into an outline that we can then follow in terms of writing the actual book. After that, the collaboration is a little less intense. I mean, we develop material, do ongoing interviews, typically over Zoom, but sometimes there'll be additional site visits. But and then the author will review the material as it's produced and give feedback. There'll be revisions. The editors are also reviewing and editing to ensure that it's looking good from a publishing standpoint. And you kind of just continue that back and forth dynamic until the project is complete. And then it kind of goes into post, and then it goes into editing, copy editing, and then we figure out the publishing direction.
Yeah. It's basically the whole book process.
Yeah, right, exactly. And what we really try to make all the connections. So if they're some projects we agent ourselves. We've done lots of book deals ourselves. Although typically we like to bring in an agent externally, bring in an ideal agent to make the deal. But we'll make those connections for certain authors. If it's a project that isn't really an ideal fit for agents, then we do help them figure out non-traditional options like hybrid publishing or self-publishing. Our goal is to just really make sure that they're not on their own, trying to figure out this very complicated world of publishing by themselves. And we've done over 7,000 books. We do about 500 a year. And so we've had a lot of experience with a lot of different publishers, a lot of different agents, a lot of different hybrid publishers. So we really ensure that they're getting the very best, and then they're not getting, there's a lot of scams out there. There's a lot of really bad actors. So we help shelter them from that and really are their partner through the whole process and then after.
Yeah, definitely. When, like, say if I wanted to come to you today and I wanted to write a book, what would those first few steps look like?
So if first thing we would figure out is your goals. What do you want from this? What 3 years down the road, what is success for you? What this book achieved for you? And it's different things for everyone. Sometimes it's a complete ROI where they really need to see, they want their business to grow. They want to have something that when someone looks at their website, they see this book and it's a bestseller. It shows that they're a best-selling author, that shows thought leadership and authority in their space. Sometimes the goal is that, and if that's the case, then we're going to think and talk through a plan that's going to achieve that goal, as opposed to somebody else that might come to us that's looking to write a family legacy piece. That's going to be a totally different goal. We're not going to be thinking about bestseller lists. We're not going to be thinking about getting a traditional publisher on board. We're going to be thinking more about how do we write something that's authentic, that's going to be serving their goals as a family legacy piece. And that's going to be a totally different publisher, totally different path that we're going to lead them down. But that's the first thing is just, what are the goals? What's your why for writing this book? And then we structure a plan and a strategy around that. And then from once we kind of understand what that is and and we know kind of what your timeline is. Everyone has different timelines. Some people, we write books in as little as 3 to 5 months, and that can be even from start until actual publishing can be that quick at times. Usually, it's a longer process, but we're thinking about your timeline as well when we're trying to put together the whole plan. And then once we figure that out and we have an idea of how we can execute the plan, at that point, then we start scheduling, the meetings to really start brainstorming and getting the book out and figuring out what the core themes are and what the position of the book is.
Is it very difficult when you're having these meetings and speaking to your clients? Is it very difficult to extract their voice and to make it sound like it is them speaking? Because the best memoirs and books I've written, you can sort of tell that author is speaking. So how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, that's critical. Like that's one of the most important parts of the whole process, is making sure that you're capturing the voice and that it really resonates and sounds like them. Is it difficult? Yes, but I mean, that's why you're hiring a really skilled ghostwriter, right? I mean, that's why you don't just hire Uncle Jim to write your memoir just because he had a degree in English. I mean, you have to, a skilled ghostwriter is someone that can really capture a voice and really be a chameleon and really enter inside that author and have the ability to produce their edge and their voice better than they can on their own. I mean, that's really the whole process. So it is difficult, but it's what we do every day. I mean, that is the skill that's one of the number one skills that a ghostwriter needs to have is the ability to adapt and capture the author's voice. Because if you don't have that, if you don't have the edge, if you don't have the authentic author's voice, then the whole project is going to fall apart. It's not going to feel connected to the author. It's not going to make sense to anyone that reads it that knows the author. And it's also just going to be there's going to be dissonance between the voice in that book and everything else that they do after. So it's really important that authentic voice and that the edge that makes that author who they are really comes through in the writing.
Yeah, definitely. Did you ever get pushback from your clients around like the way you've used their voice or the way you've written it, or how do you ever get any conflict there?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, and we'll always default to the author, right? I mean, if something's not sounding right, and sometimes it'll be like their exact words, right? Like we'll have put down their exact words on the page, and they'll be like, "That doesn't sound like me."
Yeah.
But that's fine. It's all good. Like we're all about them being happy with the result. So we'll change and adjust. And and to be fair, sometimes I get this all the time. I'm sure I'll get this when I listen to this podcast back. I'll be like, "Oh, that doesn't sound like me. That's not what I wanted to say." So it's all fair. I mean, it's really trying to uh, trying to get to a point where the author is really happy with what it is and it feels like them and they feel like they can connect with it. But yeah, sure, you can get some pushback. What we do to make sure that we're not getting off the rails early, and I think this is critically important, is we have a stopping point at the first chapter. So after the outline and everything is complete, we understand the general structure. Of course, the outline's written in pencil. I mean, we might change it as we go along. That's fine. But the first step is to write a chapter. It doesn't have to be the first chapter; it just has to be a significant chapter. And we write the chapter, and we keep revising it and rewriting it until the author really feels great about it. And it's important to do that instead of just imagine just writing half the book or a full draft. And if you didn't understand what the author was looking for with their voice, you might have just done a whole lot of work in the wrong direction. So we really make sure that we know and get sign off on them on that first chapter before we move on to any additional content.
You mentioned before, I think you said 3 to 6 months of getting a book written. What's that timeline? What does the timeline look like from sort of having your first meeting to having that final draft ready to go?
Yeah, so it can really vary. I mean, we've done some rush projects. I mean, we've done books in as little as 6 weeks. But that's atypical, right? I mean, that's really a rush crash type of a project. Usually, you're looking more like 8 months to a year from the time you first meet until you actually have the final product. There's a lot of things. There's a lot of things to go through. I mean, there's the apart from just the author's schedule. Most of our authors are very busy, and a lot of them have less time than they realize. Just to do simple things like go over the work and give feedback, and life happens. So sometimes those sorts of things can just kind of push the timeline back. However, there's also just a lot of steps involved. Not just writing the draft and getting it right, and then doing rounds of revisions because it's just normal. I mean, when you're hiring someone else to do the work, you have to expect that there is going to be a great deal of revisions because they're not you, and it's not necessarily a mistake, but they're going to come up with stuff that's going to get left off of it's going to end up on the cutting room floor.
Yeah.
So it's important to just go into it knowing that there's going to be a lot of revisions and not to expect anything to be perfect at first delivery. However, apart from the revisions and editing, we also do. I mean, we do a lot of other things too. We do beta testing, so we'll run it by a beta test group that's not related. Very important, not related or knows the author in any way. So it's a completely raw and unbiased review. Sometimes we do cultural accuracy review. So if the project is dealing with a character or experiences that are really far outside of the author's, we'll have someone come through and take a look that is from that background or experience so that they can make sure that it's accurate. We'll also do rounds of just line editing. So, even once you have a book written with a ghostwriter, it's still going to need some refinement, and you're going to need to have someone outside that doesn't know the project, that's completely detached from it, to have a fresh set of eyes go through and review everything from beginning to end. And that line editing process is really important. So there's a bunch of different little steps that are going to happen with a client's book that easily kind of get to that 8 to 12 months frame.
Yeah, interesting. At the beginning, we talked a little bit about the difference between fiction and non-fiction ghostwriting. How does the process differ between the two?
Yeah, so I mean, the general process is fairly similar, but it's just what you're looking at is a lot different in terms of so when you're structuring a book for nonfiction, and I'm talking about prescriptive nonfiction here, not like a narrative nonfiction.
So you're talking about things like business books and that sort of thing.
Like a business book or something like that, something that's related to their profession. For one, usually there's a lot of content that's already available from the client, whether it's their company handbook or their blog posts or articles or things that they've already done related to their work. that we can access and draw from to start framing the book already. Also, the goals are usually much clearer defined. It's a lot easier to write a business book because you know who your audience is. So we know exactly who and why we're writing the book, and so we're really thinking about what when we're thinking about the table of contents, when we're thinking about the chapter headings, when we're thinking about the thesis of the book, when we're thinking about the um, what need does this book solve? That can be all really narrowly defined, and we can target it right to the author that we're looking to reach. It's much more difficult with fiction and memoir to do that because it's more or less a book for everyone, right? And there's not a clearly defined reason why we're writing it. There's not a specific need necessarily that we're clearly resolving for people. And it's very easy to write to narrow down a book when you're solving a specific problem. When it's a novel, it becomes, it's art. This is something that we are appealing to something that's beyond just the practical. So it's a different approach in terms of about like when we're just thinking about the material, what makes it a good book. It's completely different. So in the planning stages, it's a lot easier and more focused and more straightforward and with the prescriptive nonfiction than with a story driven manuscript. Where then in that case we're really looking at bigger themes, character development, story arc. How can we make this all resonate and feel and really connect with the reader on a human level? And it's really hard to identify exactly which readers are going to be that's going to appeal to the most.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, when customers usually come to you with an idea for either a fiction book or a non-fiction book, what level of information do you expect them to come to you with, or can it literally just be like, "Here's my idea, let's start brainstorming"?
Yeah, it can be nothing. Yeah,
Yeah,
we get it all the time. It's very common for us for the author to really have nothing started at all, and they just said, "Hey, I just got this germ of an idea. I'm super passionate about it. I've got nothing written down. I just want to start talking and get it out. And it's just I know I want to get it out. So, uh, you know, or everyone's told them you have an amazing story. You should write a book. I would love to hear all these stories. I'd love to have this all in a book that that I could read. I think everyone's going to love it. And they hear this over and over again, and they just they don't have anything written down. They're not really sure which stories are going to be the most impactful. Also, with most people with memoir, they have so many stories, and that we've really got to kind of figure out, what are the best ones to kind of string together into this narrative, because we can't write a 2,000 page book, right? That's not gonna work. It's not gonna be marketable. I mean, we could write it, but it's not gonna be marketable, and no one's gonna want to read it. Um, so we got to think through strategically, what parts of the story connect thematically, which parts of these stories are actually really unique. Are there some that achieve the same goal? So we should maybe drop some of these stories that are basically achieving um, the same, the same thing within the narrative. So that process for that process is really thinking through how can we make a whole lot of information. Sorry, to get to the point though, they come with nothing, and then it's really as we start, then we have them share all these stories and figure out all the details. But authors come to us with nothing, or sometimes they come to us with too much. We've had authors. Oh, I don't know what the record is. I know it's over 400,000 words, but they've come with just a giant tome, a Bible of material, and it's all scattered. Sometimes it's just voice to text memos or whatever it is, and we've got to kind of take all this content and whittle it down into a book that's actually going to resonate with readers.
if you could describe the ideal amount of information people should bring to you, what would that sort of look like?
Well, we always like to have information coming out, but so it's always good to have plenty of information. We can always kind of navigate it. Ideal amount, I don't know if there's an ideal amount, but I think that the thing that I caution people against a lot is what you don't want to do is spend a lot of time writing and putting words down and basically putting a lot of effort into developing your book without first consulting with a professional. Because what we do get, and what a lot of, it's these situations where someone's already written basically the whole manuscript, and then they reach out to us saying, "Oh, I did all this on my own. I put this all together," and then we look at it and we realize that it doesn't align at all with a lot of their goals, or it's a really bad book, or they've gone way down the path. And if they would have just talked to us at the beginning, even momentarily, we could have kind of set the direction right and saved them a lot of time and future, heavy editing. So there's never a point that's too early to start consulting, at least with a professional. And then you can always kind of go off on your own, but at least you're going to have some kind of direction to go in and have some good ideas of what to do so that you're not spending a lot of time in the wrong direction.
Yeah. Is there anything that people or your clients should not expect a ghostwriter to do? Maybe there's like expectation setting type thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's all the moral stuff, right? Like they should not expect them to lie for them, perjure themselves, or the author, I should say. They do not expect us to write, racist or homophobic content. These kinds of things are a baseline. But beyond that, I mean, other than that, I mean, we really will write whatever the author wants us to. As long, and where it gets tough is when an author really wants it to be one way, when their goals are misaligned with what they want to do. So, for instance, they want to have a publishable book that's going to appeal to agents and get a traditional publishing deal, but then but they don't want to actually write a book like that. They want to write their own version that's not going to be appealing to a publisher, or that's been done a million times, or isn't as unique or original as they think. And that's where it gets kind of tricky, because we want to serve their goal of what they want with the book, but at the same time, they have to understand that sometimes you're going to have to what they call it, let go of your darlings. And you're going to have to kill some of your darlings if you really want to achieve your goal. So, ultimately, though, we will do whatever the client wants. If they want to write a terrible book that's not going to sell and that's going to just be their own pet project, like, we will do that for them. But we're going to let them know we're going to make sure their eyes are open to it and say, just so you know, this is probably, we'll say it in a nice way, but it might not appeal to traditional publishers or an agent. We're happy to do it, but just want to flag, that you might want to go a different direction if you want to optimize your chances for success in traditional publishing. And then they can decide, well, I really just want the book to be this way, and if traditional publishing won't accept it, then screw them. I'm still doing it my way. Fine, we're happy to do that for you. But we want them to have their eyes open to what's realistic.
We've talked a lot about sort of different types of ghostwriting. Like, is there anyone who'd say ghostwriting is not a great fit for?
Yeah, definitely. So ghostwriting is not a great fit for someone that really wants to always get their hands involved in the project and have them uh, have them be the hands on the keys. So, specifically, once in a while you get a client where they sign up for ghostwriting, but then every time you send them a draft, they're in there just rewriting everything, which is okay in some cases, but they might want to consider whether that they should just be writing the draft and then having a different dynamic where there's a coach or a ghost, or not a coach, not a ghostwriter, but a coach or an editor that's kind of going alongside them. Because if they really need to be hands on and they need to have that as part of the process, and every time they get a new chapter, they just can't help themselves by being like, no, I want to do it this way, and they start, I mean, if that works for them and that really stimulates them, and then that's fine. But for others, it's frustrating. And so in those cases, you'd be better off just having a book coach or an editor that where you're putting down the drafts and then they're giving you reflective feedback and structural feedback and maybe making some edits to help you sharpen it. That's, and we've seen that too. And, sometimes you don't know, right? Like sometimes you start out with a book coaching project and you realize, you know what, I really need to be the one writing this. Or sorry, you start with a ghostwriting project and you realize, I really need to be the one that's writing this myself. And then so we will flip it. We'll say, okay, no problem. Let's just change the working dynamic here. The goal is to just get this book done and have it be something that you're proud of and that you really resonate with. So we'll flip the dynamic and we'll have them write the drafts, and then the editor or the ghostwriter will become more of a coach and more of an editor instead of actually writing the drafts from scratch. And the reverse can be true too. And that happens a lot where someone says, I just want a book coach. I can do it all myself. And then 6, 8 months down the road, they've basically produced nothing and they're getting frustrated with their progress. And they just say, you know what, I'm throwing in the towel. I just want the ghostwriter to develop this, and I'll just become, the editor and interact collaboratively that way. So it's, we can always adapt, but yeah, if you really need to be hands on, you should consider a book coach or an editor instead of ghostwriting, probably.
All right, that's really good advice. I hadn't really considered like that a book coach is kind of doing a similar work to a ghostwriter, but kind of different levels of involvement. I hadn't really considered that framing before. So that's a really interesting way of putting it. When it comes to like the cost of getting a book ghostwritten and who really you're sort of targeting, how much does it cost to get a book ghostwritten? And I'm guessing it depends on lots of factors, but what sort of things are we looking at?
Yeah, there are a lot of factors. And it ranges to what, you get what you pay for, right? And so, you can find, you can go on to Readsy or go out, find people at, your local community college or something to write books for fairly cheap. But typically they're not going to have much in terms of credibility. They're not going to have, anytime you're hiring a writer, at least my advice is always make sure that they've actually written books, and ideally ones that have not only been published. They don't necessarily need to be traditionally published, because that is a pretty high bar and it's also not the bar that everybody has for their book. They might not really care about getting their book traditionally published. So why, so you don't necessarily need to have an author or a ghostwriter, I should say, that's been traditionally published, because that's going to put your price up quite a bit. But you should be hiring somebody that you can see credits. Like, there are actual credits of projects they've done, authors they've worked at, that you can verify, and that you can see the work and see the quality of it. And of course, if it has been traditionally published or if it's hit bestseller lists, then this is a real marker of a ghostwriter that knows what they're doing and can work with you and get the job done. You'll hear a ton of horror stories of people hiring writers, paying up front, and then they disappear, or they're not keeping on time with the progress milestones, or they're just delivering really shoddy content or AI developed slop. And so that's, but you're talking about price. So usually a minimum ghostwriting fee for a ghostwriter that knows what they're doing is going to be around $20,000 or so, and then it goes up from there very quickly. We don't offer any services that low. I'm just telling you that, like, if you're looking for just somebody that can probably do the job and won't screw you on the deal, you can find them out there. But usually somebody who has any kind of experience is going to be in that price range. Our services are usually starting at 50,000, and then it goes up from there. And then we've had projects that are $500,000 and more. Of course, when you're looking at a $500,000 ghostwriter, you're typically getting someone who's a New York Times bestselling writer, has multiple credits that are publicly known, and they have a long track record of success. And that's going to drive the market up for those ghostwriters. Jared Moringer is looking at $1 million plus, for working with clients. But when you've done Andre Agassi's memoir and Spare, you can drive a really high price, and he's worth it. So anyway, so the range is really wide. It really is, you get what you pay for. Typically, if you want a writer that has good publishing credits, maybe hit a couple bestseller lists or a New York Times list with some of their clients, you're going to be in the six figures, pretty quickly.
Yeah. And does that price range, that's sort of the same between like memoirs, business books, novels? It's more about like the quality of the writer you're hiring rather than the type of project it is?
Yeah, I mean, there's some variation. I mean, like, for instance, like a 40,000 word straightforward business book, sometimes that could be dramatically less for an equally qualified writer than a 150,000 word novel, right? That's going to require, not only is it longer, but it's a lot less straightforward to write a novel than a business book if it's all been put together. So it's all based on like what is it that we're working with here. Also, sometimes people will have a manuscript that they've kind of fully fleshed out, and all the characters and the ideas are pretty well developed, but they just need a writer to turn that into a finished novel. I mean, that's going to be a cheaper process than where they say, "Oh, I have a germ of an idea, but that's all I've got. Let's write a book." And you got to come up with all the characters, all of the plot twists, everything is going to come up from, from nothing. That's going to be a lot more because the interview time is going to be extensively more for that project than something that's already fully fleshed out and put together, even if it does require original writing to do so. So, like, for instance, I got a book right here. So, this book here, I'll give you two examples. This book is from the Office, the show The Office. There's one in the UK, one in the US. Steve Carell is the star of one in the US. This was a New York Times bestseller that we worked with them on. They came with a ton of material. It was an oral history of The Office. So it was based on a lot of these podcasts that Brian Bob Gardner had been doing. And so he's one of the actors on the show. And so they had a ton of content, and we just kind of had to put it together and write it into a cohesive narrative. This was a much less expensive project than, say, a novel. Let's see if I got one here. I've got a couple. What's a good one though? So, well, actually, you know what? Yeah, so we'll pause on that. But I don't see one that's a really good sense. But, well, actually, how about this one? So here's a memoir, a great fit. It's from this longtime CEO of Calvin Klein, the clothing company. This is one that we worked on really extensively. This was a lot more expensive because it was a memoir. He had nothing written, nothing developed. We went down to Florida, did extensive interviews with him, and it was a very long process to get all of the content developed and out there. So that kind of project just takes a lot longer, and so you're going to get a higher price point for something like that.
Yeah. So if you could describe your ideal clients, the sort of people you'd be looking to work with, what would they look like?
They're passionate about their book. They know why they want to write a book. They understand the value of a professional and to trust the professional to do a really great job and to know what they're doing. And to be collaborative. Someone that's, we can work very hands off. We've had projects where they just give us the idea and go, and then we come back with it. But that's not ideal. Usually we want someone that can really work with us and have that book really resonate with them and be their own voice. And so that's the ideal client.
Yeah, perfect. So yeah, this has been an absolutely fascinating interview. I've never really, I don't think I knew anywhere near as much about ghostwriting as I do now. It's such a much more involved process than I sort of considered, because a lot of the people I work with, they're self-published, and so they're kind of doing their own thing. So it's so interesting to see that whole other side to it, really going in deep with the client and seeing how that works. What are the most interesting or surprising projects you've worked on?
Well, that I'm allowed to talk about.
You're allowed to talk about, yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot that I'm not allowed to talk about. Let me see. Let's see one. Here's an interesting one. I'm not sure if you guys have seen this guy, Oz Perlman. He's there you go. You can see it. This was a New York Times bestseller. It's been on the list for a bunch of weeks and months, on multiple lists on the New York Times. Oz Perlman is a magician, and he is also an endurance athlete. But this is one of the most interesting projects that we worked with. It was very much a collaboration. I wouldn't necessarily call it a ghostwriting project, but and he's an ideal client. Super involved. We would talk to him regularly. He would record himself as he was jogging. He would jog. He jogs for he does double marathons in a single day, kind of a thing. and he'll just, as he's jogging, he'll just talk out all of his ideas on his book. But what made it so interesting is he's a magician, right? Well, he's a mentalist, so he's basically a mind reader, but it's all a trick. It's not, he doesn't really, he doesn't try to tell you that he's actually literally reading your mind like a fortune teller or something like that. But he can make it seem like it because of what he's able to do. The book is about how to read a room, how to make sure you're presenting, how to figure out the best way to put yourself in an advantage situation, where you can essentially kind of read people's minds, but also be aware of what you're giving off and kind of hack into your own brain to help you to achieve things, whether it's in business or in life. But anyway, but what it made it so fun and surprising is that when we pitched it to publishers, we went to Penguin and Random House Viking at Random House. We went to Harper and did a bunch of meetings. And at the publishing meetings, the whole meeting was his act basically. And he would come in and he would be this total group of strangers. And he would be able to forecast exactly where they went to vacation their first time and who they went to vacation with, just intuit from this random person that he just met then. But anyway, so it was amazing to see him do this act in these publishing meetings, and the whole, he just blew them away completely. So he got a huge offer from Viking, and the book's been a big success since. But yeah, that's been one of the fun ones that we worked on recently. We get a lot of business related books, a lot of IP stuff, but this one was a real kind of unique project where you could see him in action with the as part of the book publishing process.
Yeah, incredible. I ran an 8K yesterday, so I'm kind of the same as him.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, 8K. Double marathon. I think that's the same. I'm not sure about the metric versus standard conversion, but I'm sure that's close.
Yeah, it's almost exactly the same. Yeah. I'll email you afterwards to tell you how it works. Thank you so much for coming on. I mean, if people want to get in touch with you, how should they do that? And also, what should they bring to that meeting? Or what should they bring to that email?
Yeah, I think just honesty about where they're at and what they want. And we'll help them figure out what the best path for them. And if it's not with us, we'll guide them to where the best solution might be. Because we're not for everybody. We're more of a white glove, high end service, but we're always happy to talk with anybody and just help them get on the right path and figure out what's going to be best for them and their publishing needs. But yeah, you don't have to bring anything to the call. Just a curiosity, and we can talk through all the different ideas and options and get you on the right path.
Great. And if people want to get in touch, where's the best place to do that?
You can go to our website. It's kawriting.com. So KAWRITING.com. And you can, there's an easy way to contact us there. We're very phone friendly. You're not going to get put into an AI bot or call and not be able to reach somebody. Someone that knows what they're doing will pick up and be able to talk you through everything and get you on the right path.
Brilliant. Thanks so much for coming on. It's been great to chat, and we'll speak again soon.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Publishing Performance Show. I really hope you found today's episode inspiring. I absolutely love chatting to authors, writers, and people in the publishing world. Now, just before we wrap up, I want to tell you about our Publishing Performance Starter Packs. These are curated episodes and collections organised by topic that makes it super easy to find the exact content you're looking for. So whether you're wanting to deep dive into marketing strategies, explore productivity techniques, or focus on any specific area of publishing, we've organised our episodes into targeted playlists just for you. And you can find these all at teddyagsmith.com. And also, whilst you're here, let me tell you about Publishing Performance. It's the #1 platform for authors who want to increase Amazon book sales but aren't really sure where to start. Now, this show is all about helping you to sell more books, and if you're looking to boost your publishing game and to maximise your book's potential on Amazon, then Publishing Performance is designed to help authors just like you to grow your readership and to reach a much wider audience. Now, I know that Amazon ads can be slightly complicated, which is why Publishing Performance is like having a personalised ad account manager to create your ad campaigns for you, to choose your best keywords and to make adjustments in real time and to optimise them over time to save you money and to make more sales. Now, if you're investing in ads, you really want to make sure your investment is being used effectively, and Publishing Performance does just that. It aims to make your budget go further, improve your organic rank, and target keywords more effectively. You can get started with Amazon ads for free for 30 days at publishingperformance.com, and there's a link in the show notes to get that free 30 days trial.